From Holland, and Jan has had a long time, not that long because he's quite young, working with energy and energy medicine. He started off as a body worker, and he met up with a man called Nishant Matthews, and I'll let him tell the story in detail because I want to hear what he has to say. Nishant Matthews was working on a new way of using light to bring about wellness with people, to help unblock blockages. And he called his system Samasatti. Jan learnt Samasatti, the Samasatti method, and he ran with it. And he's been doing it now for a lot of years. He never stops developing it. He never stops coming up with new ideas and new theories, philosophies around Samasatti and how it works with the body and how it interacts with the therapist as well as the client. And I'm really excited to be here listening to Jan because I haven't seen Jan for the last 8 years. It's been wonderful meeting up with him again. He allowed me to teach the basic course here in Cairns last year, and for that I'm very, very grateful. The hard part for me now is that he's going on to teach a therapist course to those people that I taught last year. And if I made a mistake... Yeah, okay.
You're okay.
Thank you. Jan.
Okay. So, yeah, my journey with light it's been quite intense. First experience I'll never forget was with a training by Nishant Matthews. We arrived early in the morning, and you know, I was still an IT interim manager for Philips Eindhoven. I did that for 2.5 years. I was physically exhausted. And Nishant said to us, before we do anything with light, we go to the room next door, and I will put you in the light. So we stood there, and he said, close your eyes. And he switched on the red light. And for me, it was like, give me more, give me more, give me more, give me more. And so when we were back after 5 minutes in the classroom, people started giving feedback. And I was thinking, everybody must have liked this so much. But people were saying, I hated it. Yes? So for me, it was... I didn't understand till sometime later. I was physically exhausted and my red was very low. So I needed lots and lots of red. So my body just drank it, whereas other people in the room already had enough red, and for them it was too invasive. Yes? It learned me one thing at that point in time directly. We have a very individual reaction to color light frequencies. So if yellow is okay for me, it doesn't mean it's the same for you. Yeah. So who we are and the position we are in determines to a large extent to the color light frequencies that we already have and that we are probably low on. So it's very individual. Yeah. So and my sort of journey. I'll take you a bit into it. So just to show a bit of who I am. So I've been in IT until 2004. 26 years of, I call it developing my analytical mind. It wasn't just that, but, well, that was the core of it, you could say. And then I've switched, not right away, started doing energy work and rebalancing in 2000. And so, and I've kept on doing this. So we did rebalancing school, a 3-year training in body work, etc. So that was one part of my journey. And then about 15 years ago, 2004, I started doing color light. And it was coming home. So, and for me it really feels like I started to remember things. It wasn't new. It was already somewhere in my system, but I started to sort of resonate with it. So it came very natural. And so my inner light was being aroused by it. And so that kept on going. And you know, in all these years of work with light, try to make a calculation. 15 years of sessions, let's say 40 weeks a year, 15 people per week. That's a lot. It's about, well, 9,000 sessions or something. Not all of them are new clients. Some people keep returning all the time. But I've done thousands of persons. So it's quite a lot. And for me, it never stops. My guiding principle is there are no miracles, only unknown laws. And you know, I had so much fun this morning with the 3 young ladies doing the presentation, because I can see they're still in their miracle stage as far as light is concerned. You know, the enthusiasm that they radiate is just, and that's something I sometimes miss. If you see the miracles happen all the time, you get used to them, you kind of expect them. So you sort of lose this spark, almost, yes? But for me it's like, I always need to understand, that's maybe my IT background, how come? Simply because if we understand what made the miracle happen, we can invite them to happen again. Yeah? So, and that has been my journey for the past almost 20 years. And, well, the thing is, I see many things in my clients. I learn many things from other people. And I make theories and I test them. But I test them on the clients on the table. The clients are my laboratory. And I tend to ask, but most of them will say, well, please do. Yeah? So I'm into this all the time. Checking things in clients, see how they respond to it, see how their whole system responds to it, and then try again on someone else, and if it repeats, well, you could say, maybe this is true. So we try some more times until it really settles down, and for me it's like, well, then it's okay. You know, and I've done doctors. There's one story about a heart surgeon with heart palpitations. I tell that story in the training as well, because it's so illuminating, you could say. She came to me as a heart surgeon with heart palpitations, and she said, I've tried all the medication I know. I've been to my peers and everybody tried to help me. And I said, I heard about you and could you please help me? I said, well, I'm not sure, but let's give it a try. And the thing was, we showed up quite clearly. She had a rebellious stomach chi, which is one of the major causes of heart palpitations. And I used light to settle that down. And she stepped off the table after 45 minutes and she said, it's gone. But I'll let you know in a couple of days if it stays away. And she gave me a call 2 days later and she said, you're fantastic. It never returned. Yeah. So when she came up for a follow-up appointment, which was 2 weeks later, wasn't really needed, but she liked it. We also talked. And she said, do you think you can repeat this session for a group of people with heart palpitations? I said, no. She said, why not? I said, everybody is an individual. And the reason why the stomach chi is rebellious will, in your case, will be different from someone else. It means that someone else may need different light sequences to settle that down. And then she was a bit, let's say, disappointed because she was really into it. She was thinking, well, let's do a trial. do it in the old-fashioned way in the medical world, do a trial with blind group and study, you name it, etc., according to their rules. But then she just backed off. So for me, that's how it is, because it's like Chinese medicine, you know, there's 4,000 years of practice. I don't have to prove anything, but if you put it into the, let's say, medical world, you do. But, you know, I've tried that for years to sort of close the gap between this work and the medical world, but it is not working. So I sort of stopped doing that. And for me, it's like, well, if I see it work in a couple of persons, well, I accept it as being something that is worthwhile. And that has been turned into trainings, etc., protocols, insights, and things like that. And I think there's one very, very, very important difference between Samasatti color light therapy and many others. You know, Samasatti were the last words of Buddha. Before he died, his students asked him, "Can you give us one more lesson?" And he just said, "Samasatti." And it means, remember your truth, the truth of who you really are. Yeah. So, and that for me is the core of Samasatti color light therapy, where if I see a person, I meet the person where he or she is. In a doctor setting, the doctor is the expert and the client knows nothing. So there is a sort of gap between them. Whereas in the Samasatti approach, it's very important to make the connection. And the connection can only be made if I, as a therapist, am willing to step down, if you want to call it that way, to go to the level of my client and make the connection. So if my client is afraid, I won't skip over that. I will address it. Yes, to make the connection. Because that's the crucial thing in this work. It's not just light. It's how your client is involved in the whole thing. I heard more people talk about that, and that's very crucial. Okay. So I didn't dream up there are no miracles, only unknown laws. It was done by St. Augustine in the 4th century, so it's not new. Not new at all. Yeah. Okay. So if I try to, today I will not talk about Samasatti color light therapy and our program and basic trainings and you name it. I will focus on certain aspects of light in general, and in order to understand light in general, I have to get you through a number of sheets first, so you can sort of, let's say, get the idea. Yeah. So when I was happy to see that in Moira's presentation, the Peter Mandel model, information, energy, and body. Because if I look at architectures of persons, we are not just a body. We are also an energy system that is feeding the body, etc. And on top of that, there is information that will cascade down and will materialize in our physical system. And for me, and I heard, I keep forgetting your name, the first speaker, not Marcus, Rasmus. You said it too in similar words. For me, it's like information means the promise of form. Yes? So when it cascades down into our system, it takes shape. Yeah? So information is anything that helps us to become who we are, both physically and non-physically. So, and I will do more of this later on, but for now it's like this. We have chakras that are more or less connecting information to the energy world. We have meridians and chi that will bring it down into our physical bodies. Yeah. And we have miracle meridians. something not people talk about. They are better known as extraordinary vessels in Chinese medicine, but it's for me the qing that circulates in there that makes it special. There's no time to go into that today, but this is really miraculous. And if you look at this picture, there is one thing connecting it all, and that one thing is light. Light can be both scalar, it can be an electromagnetic wave, and it can be a photon. I remember talking to doctors who said to me, if you can show me something that bridges the gap between physical matter and energy, etc., then we can talk. I said, well, that's easy, that's light. We still don't talk, because light is too far beyond their reality. Yes? So it can't be true that something that simple can have such an impact. Yeah? So, and for me, the energy system, I heard some other people talk about it. I like to see the energy system, meridians, as the public transportation system, or the metro, the subway in a big town. If you fly over the town, you won't see it, but it's there. And the people that use the metro to get to work are information. So can you imagine what happens if the metro doesn't run? Nobody gets to work. Yes? So the importance of the meridian system is that it is a distributor of information into all the cells of our body. Yeah? So keep that in mind if possible. So this is the basic picture of, if we look at ourselves from a total perspective, this is the basic picture. Here's another entry into this also. I heard this before, Rasmus. So, the body miracle. Here's a number. 37.2 trillion. Well, I won't leave you in the dark. This is the number of cells in your body. And I thought it was 50 million, and I heard at 50 trillion, I heard other people say 100 trillion. So the Medical Scientific Society did a count. And yeah, so they found out we have sort of 190 types of cells in our body, and when they calculate it by volume, they get 70 trillion. When they calculate by weight, they get 15 million. But if they include the types of cell, they end up with 37.2 trillion cells in our body. Yeah. Yeah. And that's huge. Yeah. So here's another number. 7 million or 14 million or 10 million or, well, doesn't matter. This is the number of cells, new cells, your body produces every second. It's unbelievable, is it? So, and here's the thing. Let's say that your body has a guiding system that knows where these cells have to go to. Yeah? And, well, another thing is, of course, all these cells work in synchronicity. They seem to know what they are doing, and they seem to know what the others are doing. So that's a miracle in these numbers. And just think of it. If you cut your finger, something starts to happen. The system knows that there are more cells needed in this area. And then the cells know that they have to become a piece of skin or a piece of bone or something else. And you know, the most funny thing is, it knows when it is done. So your finger doesn't become 2 inches longer. We never think about it, but basically it's a miracle. So without us being aware of it, there is something in us that keeps guiding us all the time. And there is a little story, Simon is in the audience, of course. Simon was one of our first Australian students, and he got a mother visiting him with Mason, remember, a long time ago. Mason had 2 necrotic fingertips, and the doctors wanted to cut them off, but they went to Simon, and Simon gave me a call. So he didn't need much help, but so we started working with light on this little fellow. He was 8 months or something?
No, less.
Less, okay. And I remember when we were coming back next year, his parents flew in from Melbourne to show us Mason and the fingertips that he regenerated. Yes? So, medical world thought, well, it's not possible. But you know, this system that is guiding us all the time, it is there during pregnancy in the womb. It takes care of all the cell divisions, etc. So why wouldn't it be available after he was born? So we found a way to sort of activate this intelligence, and it's regenerated 2 fingertips. We have photographs to testify of it. Yeah. And the point is, this system is with us all the time. And some people became aware of it, like Erwin Schrodinger in the 1950s. He was a quantum physicist, a well-known one. And he said, well, if you think of things like this, the guiding system in our physical body must be quantum physics by nature, given the numbers and the amount of information that is sort of needed. It must be quantum physics. And some more research, same age, Watson and Crick, they found a double helix structure of DNA and chromosomes. And what a good name they gave it, because that's what they saw. Chromosome means light body. So in your DNA there is chromosomes, and they are the ones that receive the light and turn the light into actions in your cells and in the way cells are. Yeah? And then there was a person mentioned before, Fritz Albert Popp, in the 1980s. So he said, after a lot of research, every cell in our body is, through its DNA, a receiver and transmitter of light, photons. Yes? Light is the language of our cells. And although they produce tiny amounts of light, I think he said if you take a little light and put it on a mountain and you look at it from 10 miles distance, that is about the strength of light that is between the cells. It's microamperes, tiny. Yes? So, and the thing to remember here is that in the way the work we do, Samasatti color light therapy, we call this guiding system the light matrix. So the light matrix is available to us non-stop all the time, and is directing our cellular life, our health, our well-being. Yes? And, well, the work we do is about that. Simple, because if I'll say that more often, I tend to say I don't cure anything. I don't heal anything. I enable the system that's already there to cure itself. So I enable the system to do something by giving it the light it is missing. Yeah? So, and then there's reasons why the light is missing. Okay, another one or two, Dawson Church and Bruce Lipton, who had a major influence on what I do, is epigenetics. How your thoughts and your beliefs influence your DNA. And that's why I showed the first slide. I'm redesigning my DNA, I'm processing my old emotions and trauma, etc. Yes? Because if we do, then something intrinsic changes in our DNA, and it really sort of takes a new position. So we have the ability to change our DNA Yes? So here's something about light. As Bob said, it's the language of our cells. But not just that. Our aura field consists of a number of layers or bodies. And each of these bodies is a holographic field. Yeah? And here's a convention from light work we noticed for a long time. We write into these fields with colored lights, and we read from these fields with colored lights. So the communication is guided by light, not just between the cells, but also between our mental and emotional world and our soul world. Light is the interaction between them. And there's another convention. The same light that was used to store an unprocessed emotion is also used to retrieve it from your field, to make it actual again. Another sort of piece of information, 85% of light that's available in our system comes through the eyes. The other 15% comes through the skin. And here's another truth. I heard it the first time like 15 years ago from people from Syntonics, light on eyes, and they said, the eyes have the ability to block a color. Yeah? So if we put all this together in a sort of impact, so here you are. You end up in an event or situation, something nasty happens, and there is a strong emotion, but you cannot process it. Your father died and there is grief, but you keep it in. Yeah? What happens after some time? The grief, the actual emotions are in your meridian system. The meridian system is the processing area. Yes? And works like this. If an emotion hasn't been processed and it has been in your meridian system for, let's say, a week or maybe 2 weeks, your system cannot afford that. So what it does, it pushes it out. It goes into the emotional field and is stored there with a color. Let's say it's yellow. Yeah? So what happens next is following. To avoid to ever feel this trauma or situation or emotion again, we instruct, we don't do it deliberately, the eyes to block yellow. So we are never remembered into the trauma again. So, and after some time we forget about it. But it is in our emotional field, and it is there, and it is creating impact. Yeah. And the other thing that happens is that the transport of information to our cells is partly impaired, because the yellow transporter is no longer fully available to us. It means that the information that usually travels with yellow has a hard time to instructing your cells and your DNA. Yes? So you can imagine what happens next. The DNA starts to falter, and the tissues start to lose quality, degeneration. Yeah, so in this way, light plays a crucial role in all of these things, like storing emotions and creating impact. Yeah? So that's why light is so important. And in the medical world, we only see the physical impact of it, the degeneration or the actual problems that people have, but we only look at 1 out of 3 layers. We don't look at energy, we don't look at information. So we try to fix it on the lowest level. Yes, and other people talked about it. We use chemical stuff to do that, and that creates more impact into our light matrix. You know, for me it's simple. I don't think I can outdo this light matrix with all its guiding principles and things it does for my body. Yeah? And I can imagine if you put a pill in me, it will create havoc in this light matrix system because, well, it wasn't meant to be operated that way. So there's a lot of side effects. Yeah? Okay. Are you still with me? Okay. So I take you a level higher. Our holographic nature. This explains a lot, for me at any rate. So there's a few basic rules. Every holographic field is built on color light frequencies. So our emotional field is a holographic field, but it is overlapping with the mental field, which is also a holographic field. They take the same space around me and in me. Every holographic field needs a substantial reality as its anchoring point. It cannot just hover around. It needs a physical anchor. And our holographic field, the anchor of it, is our physical body. To be more precise, it's the community of 37 trillion cells in our body that provide this. Yes. And as quantum physicists know, and other people know too, the holographic principle is that the total content of the holographic field is reflected in its smallest particles, the fractals. So, the 37 trillion cells of our body are the fractals of our total holographic reality. Every cell knows everything about you. Yeah. So, and this is a big reality. And again, light is crucial. You know, I remember I saw a Star Wars movie in 1972 or something, I'm not sure when it was, a long time ago, when I was younger. And I saw Obi-Wan Kenobi, because they pushed a button and a holographic field showed up, and he started talking. Well, you know, and the scientific world can recreate holographic fields, but they can only do it with a certain number of monochromatic frequencies, like infrared and green. But our body is immensely more sophisticated. We can do it with any color. Yeah? So, it's all of these overlapping holographic fields that determine our reality. Light. Okay. So, if we look at cells like the 37 trillion, there is one. It contains of two parts, you could say, a cell body and a cell nucleus with the DNA inside. And the way things are provided to us is like this. There is, from a physical point of view, there's blood and lymph and extracellular fluid that brings nutrients to our cellular membranes. Yeah? And I agree with Bruce Lipton. I say, okay, the real intelligence is in the cell membrane. There's receptors, and they take from the extracellular fluid what they need. Yeah? So what comes in there is mainly oxygen through the air that we breathe. It is food, so the nutrients come to us through the blood. Yeah? So in that way, we keep being fed all the time. There's metabolism in the cells to do something with it, to turn it into ATP. Who was talking about that? Yeah, oh, it was Charles. Yes. So ATP is an important thing. But there's something else, because this is the physical side, and here is the non-physical side. But see the difference. Light and chi goes to the cell kernel and not to the cell membrane. Yes? And what it brings is qing from the meridians, which is a sort of very magic stuff. It works miracles. So it's a sort of basic material we are composed of. Yeah. Chinese call our mind, they call it Shen, and I like that much more because Shen is the combination of our soul, our spirit, our mind, and our emotions, etc. So that's a rich world of things. And soul is also mentioned separately here because of its importance. Yeah? But these are the non-physical things that create an influence on all of our cells. So this is the good side of the story. But there's also 37 trillion risk areas. Because like this, not only nutrients and oxygen comes in through blood and lymph, etc., but also bacteria, viruses, fungi, molds, parasites, you name it. Yeah? And from the other side, we also have environmental and physical agents, pesticides, all these things. And they also enter into our physical system with the blood, the lymph, etc. So we have all these risk areas. And then it doesn't happen often these days, but in the old days when people had intense physical labor, we also would have physical overload. It happens, you know, marathon runners and athletes, extreme athletes, etc., they create physical overload. But from the other side we have light and chi, and what comes in through that is emotions and trauma. Unprocessed emotions and trauma. Oh, there's much of it, yes, and it's in all of us. And, well, let's say some of it we have processed, but the things we didn't process, I explained earlier, we have pushed to the side and we more or less forgot about it. But it doesn't mean it isn't there. It's there. Okay? So, and from the Shen perspective, the mind, we have not only limiting beliefs, there's a whole list, but there is things like stress and survival strategies and conscience, you know, your inner demons that you face, etc. So, and there is all these thoughts that we have all the time, yeah, and so they come in through light and chi and enter into your cells. And there is something called karma. That depends on what you believe, but I believe that we are not here just once, but we keep returning until we dealt with things. So there is karma, and karma travels with us. If we incarnate again, it's there. And it needs to be taken care of. That's part of our soul's mission. So it enters into our cellular life through light and chi. And these days, more and more like 5G, we are dealing with electromagnetic overload. Something that gets worse every day. So it's a big thing. How to maintain health with all of that. And these days also we have mental overload, stress. Yeah. So our cells have a hard life, as we do. Yeah. So now I'm going to tell you something which is very, very related and has to do with microbes and toxins. Simple fact is, every microbe and toxin in existence has its own holographic field, carrying its own information in its own color light frequencies. Yeah? So, this information is important to them, like a bacteria in your body has its own information, and you cannot blame them for it. Yes. But they tend to have a damaging effect on us. What do you think that a bacteria most important thing is? Yes, there's two things: survival itself and reproduction. So it inflates, or it puts this information into your cells, etc., and starts to create its own thing. Yeah. So we cannot blame them for it. It just happens. And the thing is quite simply, but it's an open door more or less. When microbes and toxins enter into our body, they also invade the space that holds our holographic fields. So there's another holographic field. Yeah? And their holographic fields start overlapping with our own holographic fields. Still with me? Okay. So, let's say that in optimal circumstances, this wouldn't really impact us very much. But here's what happens. If you block a color light frequency, it will turn into shortage of this light frequency on the level of your cells. Yes? And then the overlapping holographic fields of the microbes and toxins in our physical body are very happy to provide us with these missing color light frequencies. And you know what happens next? As a result, their information has free access when our cells take in their light frequencies. Because light brings information in. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. So how does this work out? A bit like this. The more color light frequencies we block, the more opportunities we offer to the communities of microbes and toxins to expose their information and content and influences on us. Take it even further. The less whole we are, the more prone we are to disease and being unhealthy as a result. Wholeness makes us immune. I guess most of us know, we have felt it, experienced it, etc. But this is one of the reasons why. So the more whole you are, the more issues you process, the more emotions you have gone through, the more whole you are and the less impact it has. Yeah? So when I process my emotions and trauma, I just not only redesign my DSA, but I sort of clean out the path for my soul to come through, etc. Yeah? So if you take it from a slightly different perspective, you could also say when we experience the impact of microbes and toxins, it shows we have work to do. We are not whole yet. Yeah? So, and I think myself included, I experience it every now and again. So then I know, what's not whole in me? Yeah? So I get curious and see what's going on. Yeah? So, let me take you back to when you started as a human being. We did baby massage, and we had as a sort of logo there, babies are a great way to start people. Here's a soul, and the soul wants to incarnate. And he scans the world until he finds a man and a woman making love in the right settings for his soul journey that he wants to go through. And then he decides to enter. So what happens is this. You know, the sperm reaches the cell and we create the first cell called the zygote. Huh? But then there's the information of the soul that wants to get in, and you know, it's simple now. The information, intentions, etc. of the soul enter into the first cell using light. Yeah? And then, you know, I've studied that also from Chinese medicine. The first cell division only takes place roughly after 30 hours. After that it goes quickly. But in these first 30 hours, a lot of things are happening. We won't go into that now. But there's a reason why, because let's say that the whole life to unfold is sort of created in this first cell in forms of information and intentions and you name it. Yeah? And we may say from a Western perspective, the 23 chromosome of the mother combines with the 23 chromosomes of the father, or the Chinese will say, heavenly yang unites with earthly yin. Yeah? There's many ways of perceiving it, but it takes a long time, and once it has all settled, it starts replicating and it starts to create organs and tissues, and it starts to create a whole body. And then 9 months later, you show up in the world. And you enter into life itself. And point is, certain point in time in our growing up, we create an ego, we create a mind. And you know, the basic trauma that we all go through is, as a child, we want to live our free will. But we also want to fit in. So to be able to fit in, we need to sacrifice part of our free will, otherwise we are not accepted. So, and that's the moment we switch from living, to survival. Yeah? And survival is a reaction to the environment. So, let's say that in a regular situation the mind would interact with the soul. Yeah. But let's say also that when life is challenging us, we become less and less aware of what the soul was supposed to do here. Because we enter into life, and what happens is, apart from the karma that the soul will bring in, we enter into conflicts, we enter into trauma, we enter into events and situations. And these events and situations create unprocessed emotions. And you see what happens to the unprocessed emotions. They follow the photon track into all your cells. Yeah? So your cells keep themselves informed about what happens. Well, let's say they are informed about what happens. And the same goes for all the limiting beliefs and our survival strategies, and you name it, all the other things. We create them. And they are a sort of circling almost the same cycle. But here's the thing. For most people, this smaller cycle has totally taken over. We are not so much aware of the bigger cycle, where the soul is involved. Maybe not so much for you, because you're here and it means that you have a certain interest. So probably you are aware of this. So, yeah. But for most people, and you need to take that into account, they are circulating here. Yeah? And that's what I take into account when a person comes in my practice facility for the first time. This is their reality. So it's my reality. Because I want to meet them where they are. and they are in their pain or in their cramp or in their emotion or whatever. Okay, so I will now take you more or less back to the picture of information, energy and matter. And I take it from two perspectives. One is the more esoteric perspective, the other is the more quantum physics perspective. Both sides are there. And so if this is the model with the arrows in between them indicating light, let's start at the information level. That is totally different in reality. It is a reality of no time and no space. As the quantum physicists call it, magnetoelectric. It's the other way around. We, in our world, is electromagnetic, but this is the other way around. Yes? No time, no space. Hard to get your mind around that. And on that level, we talk about scalar light. So that is light that is not controlled by time or space. If we go to the more esoteric perspective, one of the biggest information providers could be your soul, because he's here for a reason. And the reason has been more or less expressed in a blueprint, design of what you came here to do. And one of the pieces of information are intentions. And intentions can be intentions from your soul, but also from your mind. And another piece of information comes from the morphogenetic field. I cannot go in depth here, but morphogenetic field is something that is available in all of us, and we stand on it, lean on it. It is the human race morphogenetic field. Story of the 100th monkey, I won't go into it. Yeah. And for most of us, the biggest provider of information is the mind. The thoughts. How many thoughts do we have a day? Thousands. You know, and these thoughts enter into the system and end up in your DNA. Yeah. Okay. And on the information level, we also have virtues, and I'll tell you a bit about it, because the rules on information level are totally different. For instance, if I give you $5, I have 5 less and you have 5 more. If I give you information, I don't lose it, and it builds yours. So sharing is multiplying in this area. It also goes for the other virtues like love and respect and that sort of stuff. We can freely give it away. Yeah? And share it with other people. So this is something that doesn't, the rules that we normally know don't apply here. Okay. Then we have the energy level. That's electromagnetic. We know that. Yeah? And time and space do play an important role here. We have past, present and future. You know, and that is needed for us to be able to experience. Without past, present and future, there would be no experiencing. Yeah? And what we have here is light waves. Something different from scalar light, but it is the light waves we know. Yeah. The other thing we have here is chi and prana. Then we have the final level, which is body. Physical matter, and like one of the famous quantum physicists said, matter is frozen light. Yeah, so if you see that information travels with light and information is the promise of form, it helps us to take shape. So it's more or less frozen light. We are frozen light. Yeah? You know what crystal means? The word crystal, it comes from Greek kristallos. It means frozen light. Yeah? Just a sidestep. Okay? So what we have on this level is light as particles, photons, and we have light bodies, the chromosomes in our DNA. So here you see the whole path of high-level information cascading down using light into individual cells of our body with light. And the chromosomes play a very important role in that whole thing. Yeah. Are you still with me? Okay. So
you asked if we were all with you, and Siri said, "Yes, that's what I thought."
yeah. So if I look at my work the last 15 years with light, etc., it is like this. That's why the client interaction is so important. If the intention of my client, the mind of my client is not with me but against me, nothing will happen. Yeah? So I must at least create reasonable doubt. I'll give you a little story. Happened a couple of times. A man comes in, made an appointment, and he says, "I'm sent by my wife. Because, you know, my wife benefited much from it and now she wants me to come." So I will look at him and say, "What can I do for you and not for your wife?" And they go, Yeah, so, and if they don't respond, I say, "Well, it seems like your wife is pulling the strings, doesn't she?" I want to meet him where he is. Yes? And I know for sure, probably after this session, I will never see him again. Yes? So I try to find him. Find him where he is. Yeah? And sometimes it works, most of the time it doesn't. But I'm not sort of into spending my energy in pushing a rock. Yes? I'm not into that. So, yeah. And sometimes they sort of melt and start to interact. Well, we want something. Yeah? So, here's the thing. The mind is the biggest programmer of our DNA because it is a non-stop influence going on. And if you shine your light with intentions into your client, and their intention is perpendicular or onto what you want to achieve, or want them to achieve, well, not much is going to happen. The intention that has been brought in by light will, within a couple of minutes or hours, be overruled by the mind again. Yeah? So, yeah. So it's important to see that and, well, see if you can get your client on your side of the table and not at the opposite side. So the mind creates an enormous impact on our DNA. So one of the things we all know is stress. And I like to shock my clients, say stress is a choice. Huh? So, well, yeah, it's your reaction to what happens around you. It's your reaction. Yeah? So you can do away with stress by changing your reaction. Yeah? Unprocessed emotions, well, open door, I guess. Burdening thoughts and feelings. and burdening events and situations like conflicts, limiting beliefs. There's lots of them. I'll give you a little story, and Wilma will, she has heard it so many times. But it's like this. I was never angry.
That was your wife.
That was my wife. I am angry now every now and again. So, here's how it came, I was in rebalancing school and we went through something, and I went through an experience when I was 3 years old. I got very angry with my mom and I started hitting her. But much to my surprise, she hit me back. Bam! So it really scared me off. So it was like, then there is this little mind and thing, blah, 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 blah. So I must never be angry again. Because if I do, it will hit back on me. Yes? That has been with me for more than 40 years and I was not aware of it. Yeah? But then in the rebalancing class, I started becoming aware of it. So it was this limiting belief that kept me safe, you could say, for more than 40 years. Yeah? So that's how it goes. Most of the fears we have are not emotional. Most of the fears we have are mental. We are afraid of being afraid. Yeah? So, and that bites our tail.
Angry all the time, yeah?
Sorry?
Does this mean you're now angry all the time?
Well, most of the time.
You look pretty good for 43.
Yeah. So, that's how it goes. So limiting beliefs is a big thing in most of us. But we also have survival strategies or coping mechanisms. The Enneagram by Alan Palmer. There are 9 survival strategies. I'll never forget when I was in Denmark and a specialist in this was on stage. He put on 5 chairs and he started to reading about the number 9 survival strategy, and was an audience like this, and he said, if you feel it applies to you, please come over and sit on the chair. So we started talking about the number 9, and I was thinking, how does he know? Because it was me. So I stood up and sat on the chair, and he asked me a question, and I said, yeah. So he said, well, you're a 9, keep sitting. Yes. So I became interested, because it was like, I thought these things nobody knew, but it was just in a book and you could read it out loud. Yeah. So there is 9 survival strategies, and we choose them as a child because the world is not safe enough for us. So in order for us to be able to keep on living, we create these strategies. Yeah? So all of us have at least, most of us have one favorite strategy. And although when you grow older you can overcome it, but when it really gets nasty, you go back in this survival strategy. So, and your mind is facilitating that. Let's say that it's there for a good reason. But the point is, if you're 45, does it still serve me? It was created when I was 3. So, no, it doesn't. So, okay. Yeah. Conscience, qualms of conscience. I like the Chinese interpretation of this. They talk about inner demons. And they all have a name, like Q Yin, which is the nocturnal demon. He visits you during your sleep, gives you bad dreams and nightmares. Yeah? But it's you. It's part of you that is pushed into the corner and wants to show up, wants to be heard. And these days we have social media and of course, other social context as well, but you know, there's so much impact from it, from parents, children, friends, etc. So we have to live up to the expectations of our social context, and that creates a lot of stress. Yeah. And there is things like TV and internet, but the thing is quite simply, anything you see on TV or read on the internet can only internalize if your Shen acknowledges it and takes it in. Yeah? You know, I have a client who had a heart attack and has recovered and is fine, is now retired, etc. And we had a dinner with him and his wife, because they're also friends. And we started talking, and he started talking about Brexit. And he was upset with it. And for me it was like, well, he has no job anymore, but his mind wants to grab something to be angry about. So let's do it. So he keeps himself going into stress. And, well, that's the free choice we all have. Yeah? The only thing I can do is make him aware of it and say, do you see what you're doing? Yeah? And then if he chooses to keep doing it, who am I? So, and all these things that the mind creates, well, leads to imbalanced behavior and attitudes, or even stronger, to unhealthy habits or even addictions. But it also leads to physical degeneration. Yeah. So we need to take that into account. Again, for me as a practitioner, light therapist, it's not just the working with light that matters, but it's the interaction with my client. That is the most crucial. That is not, yeah, it's the most crucial. It's, light is supporting that, and light is massively helping to get things moving. Yes, and but it's important for the effects to sort of linger on, that the mindset of my client is in the direction of what we want to accomplish and not against it. Yeah. So if we do trainings, Samasatti color light trainings, it is a mixture of learning people to work with light and learning therapists to have the right attitude, to interact in a certain way, and to hold the space for your client. Yeah? To hold a sort of holy space in which things can emerge and start to be processed. Because they cannot do that themselves. They need help to do that. Yeah? Okay. Questions? Yeah.
If we have more bacteria in our body than cells in our body, what hope is there?
Well, good question, and here's the answer. Well, if you have more bacteria in your body than cells, what's the use? Well, have you ever heard about the microbiome? Well, we have a community of bacteria and some other microbes that are helping us to maintain our health. And it is a beautiful symbiosis between your mucosa in your bodies and the enzymes that are in there and the bacteria, because the enzymes in your mucosa protect these bacteria from being attacked by your immune system. So, and in return, they help to dismantle bacteria that come in. And I read a book called 10% Human, maybe you did too. So we have like 10 times more bacteria in our body than we have cells. And this is one of the reasons. So 70% of our immune function is done by the microbiome. So that's the use of these bacteria.
So what heat effect does the photons have on the etheric, the emotional, and the mental bodies? So that's three different streams of information coming in.
Well, first of all, the effect of photons, he said, on our emotional, mental, etc. bodies. First of all, it is light waves that have that. That's a different shape of light, but okay. As I said, we store everything that we do, like emotions, but also our mental stuff, like the whole list I just showed you, are things that are, by using light, are stored in your mental field. And the karma things that you have are stored in your other body, that's higher up, spiritual body or causal body. Yes. So your whole light system is a total reference frame for not just you, but also your soul history. It's total. Everything. Yeah. And that makes it worthwhile, very worthwhile, but also complex, challenging. Yeah. So, but I make it easy, so very easy. Client comes in. We have a little talk, intake. I say, what color do you hate? Because the color they hate is the color that is used to store something that is very important to them. And I know if I never want to see them again, I start with this color. It will put them in their emotional world right away. So I tend to stay away from it. I make a note. Yellow is allergy color, and that's what we call it. Yes. But I'm very careful in applying that color. I rather use, to start with, the opposite color, like blue. So, yeah, that will make them feel comfortable, but I also want them to start relating to the issue. So I may bring in yellow, depending on the person. Some can handle, some can't. So that's how that goes. So that's the point. If you use a color, you don't only shine on a physical body, but you shine in a mental field, emotional field, a causal field, and all these fields are holographic. So you can create quite a reaction. Yeah.
My late mother-in-law had a very great dislike for blue, and yet, from what I heard from colour therapists, blue is one of the good things for inflammation. She absolutely, totally, and she lived in misery for the last few years of her life.
Yeah, so the point is, let's say she blocks blue. And blue creates space in your whole system, also in your joints. So it's like, if you block blue, there's no space. Yeah? And it will have a mental effect, it will have a physical effect, etc. So, yeah, for me these things make sense. As soon as you understand the whole mechanism, there's always a reason why she doesn't like blue, and that's the most interesting. Yeah?
I found that very interesting.
Yeah.
When you were talking about your example of anger,
Mm-hmm.
when you discovered what that was, where it came from, what do you move on to then? How do you do with that extra space you had in your...
Well, first of all, they had a couple of mattresses there and some clubs, and so you could, yes, and it's like this. So if you really find your anger, you cannot sit in a corner and say, I'm angry. No, this is, yes. So it's important to, when I tell my clients, and a couple of them have done that, I say, buy a boxing sack. And if you feel the anger coming, don't tell anyone, just go to the boxing sack and kick and scream, and etc. Because the physical energy of the anger needs to be out. And I remember Belgian client, this is more than 10 years ago, after 3 months of doing that, I asked her about it. She said, you know, last week I've only been with the boxing sack once. Yeah. So, and it has nothing to do with light, you know, so it has to do with the person, and you know, light will make you aware of things. So, but it means if your client doesn't take responsibility, it doesn't change. So it's important that they take responsibility and ownership and do something with it. So, and that's at the core of Samasatti color light therapy as well.